Remember Boosted boards? They were a premium electric skateboard company that was quite popular back in the early 2010s, largely thanks to one influencer, Casey Neistat. Casey was an avid user of Boosted boards and used them to get all around New York City, and given that he was vlogging on a daily basis during this time period and getting millions of views on each and every video, the amount of brand exposure he got for Boosted was insane. All of a sudden, Boosted was the go-to electric skateboard manufacturer for millennials, despite often costing over $1,000 per board. Pretty soon, Boosted started receiving even more coverage from Marcus Brownlee, a few viral videos, and even traditional news outlets. For the longest time, it seemed that Boosted was truly a humble grassroots success story that fulfilled a specific niche, but things didn't stay that way forever. Moving into the late 2010s, we started seeing viral stories pop up that Boosted boards were overheating and catching on fire. Boosted didn't just try to sweep this under the rug either. They publicly admitted the issue and announced a recall of second-generation boards during the holiday season of 2016, making it clear that they prioritized consumer safety over maximizing profits. But despite their goodwill, they slowly faded into the background as they resolved their issues and came out with a new generation of boards. Just like before, these boards were also covered by Casey and a slew of other popular creators, but despite the social media coverage, sales didn't get all that much better for Boosted. They even tried to diversify their business, but all of their efforts to expand outside of just skateboards also fell flat. And as a money-burning VC-backed startup, the only way that Boosted was gonna survive was by showing growth. And given that they didn't have much growth to show, investors would eventually pull the plug on Boosted, and Boosted would file for bankruptcy in mid-2020. Looking back, it seems that just one public misstep destroyed the entire company, but really, the boards catching on fire was just the tip of the iceberg. So here's what really happened to Boosted. Taking a look back, the story of Boosted dates back to 2011 to a couple of Stanford students named Sanjay Dastur, John Ullman, and Matthew Tran. Like most college students and urban dwellers in general, a daily pain point for these guys was walking around campus and nearby areas. Technically, everything was super close within just a few mile radius. But when you're constantly walking back and forth between your apartment, classes, grocery stores, and libraries, commuting time starts to add up pretty quickly. The go-to solution for most people is to simply ride a bike, but our trio wanted a smaller, simpler solution that could be easily carried around without compromising on speed. Thus, the idea for an electric skateboard was born, and our trio was by no means interested in slapping a motor onto a skateboard and calling it a day. They wanted to create an extremely refined and reliable experience. So they started designing a motorized skateboard from scratch, constantly tweaking and improving each aspect, whether that be acceleration, braking, handling, or durability. Fortunately, they had plenty of time and resources to do this, as they had secured backing from Stanford's own startup accelerator, StartX. Eventually, they would come up with an extremely premium board that people would call the Apple of e-boards. And to gauge just how interested people would be about a Boosted board, the trio would launch a Kickstarter campaign with a goal of raising $100,000. To their surprise, they would hit the goal in just one day, and they would end up raising nearly $500,000. By all accounts, this was a great success, but reading between the lines, you could already see a few red flags, primarily the number of backers. Despite raising $467,000, Boosted only had a total of 1,100 backers. The average backer was putting up $420, meaning that to reach their $100,000 goal, they only had to get 200 to 250 backers. Not a bad goal by any means, but really brings into question just how big the target market really was. Nonetheless, Boosted would continue with their marketing and go-to-market effort. These were young guys who understood the power of social media, and as such, much of their efforts went into growing their Reddit and Facebook pages. Sanjay even hosted a TED Talk that would go viral, pulling in nearly 2 million views. All of this traction helped Boosted raise another $10 million in funding, but what happened next was something that none of them could have ever anticipated. Boosted had caught the attention of up-and-coming YouTube star Casey Neistat, who would single-handedly boost interest in Boosted by a whopping 300%. This trend would simply go into overdrive when a creator named Jesse posted a viral video of him riding a boosted board around New York City that was made to look like the magic carpet from Aladdin. This video would go on to reach 35 million views. And Jesse would go on to make a follow-up to this video in San Francisco that went on to get 13 million views. And all of that was just on Jesse's channel itself. And it's very likely that with all of the reposts and media coverage, this little stunt drew the attention of over 100 million people. Boosted could not have even dreamed of a more successful brand awareness campaign, but Boosted would soon learn that brand awareness and sales were two completely different things. None of this is to say that Boosted didn't have a roaring start. Just due to the raw magnitude of exposure that they enjoyed, they obviously sold a bunch of boards, though we don't know the exact number. But once all of the hype settled down, Boosted was left with a much trickier situation. The reality was that the original problem that they were trying to solve did not even benefit from their invention. Here's the thing, commuting on college campuses is surely a hurdle for college students, but you know what's an even bigger hurdle? Spending $400 to $500 or even over $1,000 on a skateboard. So aside from a few rich kids, Boosted had largely boxed themselves out of the college market simply due to price. And this is really quite a shame given that most college students probably did know about Boosted and many of them probably even wanted one, but the price was simply too big to swallow. Fortunately, Boosted also appealed to urban dwellers as well, but the same issue largely applied here. Those who walked everywhere usually could not afford a premium electric skateboard, especially with the rents and general cost of living in these cities. And those who could afford it weren't exactly the kind to be riding around the city. I mean, could you imagine an investment banker or corporate lawyer riding one of these to work on a regular basis? So really, boosted boards only appeal to exception cases like Casey, high-income earners who regularly traverse the city. This isn't to say that YouTubers like Casey and DeMarcus were capping and that boosted boards weren't great products. They were phenomenal products, but just because you have a phenomenal product doesn't mean that it'll sell. It's the same issue that Lucid is facing right now. By all accounts, they've made a car that tops not just Tesla, but the EV industry in general in virtually every category. A lot of people would love to have a Lucid, but with that being said, there's just not all that many people who can buy a $100,000 luxury electric sedan. It was the same thing with the Boosted, and things only got worse as competitors started catching wind of this trend, particularly Lime. If you're not familiar with Lime Scooter, they're the guys who started the whole electric scooter trend. Basically, they were looking to do the exact same thing as Boosted, but with two key differences. Instead of skateboards, it was scooters, which is a lot easier to ride for most people. And two, instead of having consumers buy their scooters, they had people rent their scooters. Generally, a Lime scooter costs $1 to $1.50 to start riding, and then 15 to 39 cents per minute of riding depending on the city. From the business side of things, this was a terrible idea, because achieving profitability with this model was a nightmare. In fact, a major competitor to Lime called Bird just filed for bankruptcy last month after not being able to make this model work. But from the consumer side of things, this model was great. They could pay just a few bucks to get around the city on a few occasions when they were in a rush or were just feeling lazy, which was a lot more affordable than getting a boosted board. Now, you could argue that these small transactions eventually add up to being even more than the price of a boosted board, and you're probably right. But for most consumers, it's much easier to afford a $5 microcharge every time they ride over a $500 upfront cost. And just as Boosted was struggling to find their core market and Lime entered the scene, boosted boards would start catching fire. The whole fiasco with the boosted boards catching fire takes us back to late 2016 to a web developer named Rick Bros, or more specifically his roommate. One day when Rick was out, his boosted board would start overheating and fill his apartment with a bunch of toxic smoke, which naturally frightened his roommate. Instead of vacating the apartment as soon as possible though, the roommate would decide to record the incident, which as you would guess would end up going viral on Reddit. Given that Boosted would eventually go bankrupt, it wouldn't have been surprising if Boosted had just pushed this under the rug and acted like it never happened. But Boosted did the exact opposite. They did the right thing. They reached out to Rick immediately, offered a replacement, and wanted to take a look at the defective board to fix the issue. Boosted CEO Sanjay took it even one step further. He would fly from California to New York just to meet up with Rick in person and address the issue. Before they could resolve the issue though, another report about a defective booster board would come out, and this would pretty much force Boosted to issue a full recall. It turned out that the issue was that water was able to get into the battery pack when riding, which eventually caused a short circuit. Boosted would of course fix the issue and come out with a refined version, but things were never the same. As such, many publications often point to the fire incident as being the definitive end to Boosted, but I'd argue that they were already headed in that direction, and the fire incident simply accelerated that trend. You see, for Sanjay, electric skateboards was always just an entry point into the electric market. His end goal was always to build out a whole slew of electric products like bikes and scooters, but to his disappointment, these products never took off. Sanjay was even willing to step to the side and let another person have a shot at being CEO and expanding Boosted, but this wasn't all that successful either. Well, actually, technically, they did continue to run super successful marketing campaigns. They partnered with skateboarding legend Tony Hawk and even almost Kanye West. But see, brand awareness and marketing was never where Boosted fell short in the first place. They always crushed it in those aspects. Where they truly fell short was product market fit and profitability, which remained constant throughout their run. And eventually in mid-2020, they simply ran out of funding and had no choice but to file for bankruptcy. They would sell off the remaining parts of the business to Lime and a company who wanted to take on the Boosted brand name. And if you look up Boosted today, these new owners are who show up. But these guys have nothing to do with the original Boosted other than the name, and that's what happened to Boosted boards. Another product that blew up in the 2010s only to fade into oblivion was GoPro. Check out this video to learn more, but until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.